Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Friday, and you know what that means. It means we forgot to record earlier in the week, but it also means it's time to get nerdy, y'all. Welcome to episode number 45 of Two Nerds in a Pod for October 13th, 2017. I'm Lam, also known as Mr. Nice Guy, and I got my comrade in gaming commentary here with me, the miggity Mac, also known as Maction. Mac, what is up, man? We're recording way late in time and in day. How are you, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing all right. I mean, Mr. Nice Guy, unfortunately, I have to admit, I feel bad. We're 45 episodes in, and I feel like every time you ask that question, I say almost the exact same thing.
Dude,
so I'm going to change it up.
It's okay, because I always do the exact same intro, minus the number and the date changing, so that makes it okay.
No, the intro has to be standardized. But you know what, Mr. Nice Guy? I'm going to break the trend. I'm going to break this right now by saying, Mr. Nice Guy, I'm doing fantastic. If I had a tail, I'd be wagging it. If I were doing any better, there would need to be two of me.
Uh-oh. That's fantastic.
That is. And a lot of it has to do with you, my good man.
Oh, really? Just the fact that we're doing the show?
Yeah, making the time, even though Tuesday didn't work out, us being able to make it work out and get together on a on a Friday. I mean, yes,
dude, this is fantastic. It's brilliant. And now I got to know, because you're wearing some glasses. Are those prescription or are those anti-glare PC glasses that you're wearing? The people want to know.
These are anti-glare PC glasses. I tend to wear them when I know I'm going to be staring at a screen for more than 3 hours at a go, just to, keep the eye strain down a bit. It becomes important in your old age.
It does, and even when you're not that old. So, well, cool, man. So I came home straight from a show. I did a show tonight. It was really, really good. Friday night early shows, at least at this particular club that I was working, are typically like a light audience. There's not a lot of people. Most of them are middle-aged. Tonight, the crowd was popping. I came out, I was like, yo, my name is Lam, and they were like, like it was a very easy audience. So I'm still pretty energized and hyped from that. Every comic on the show had a really, really solid set. It's kind of like what dreams are made of, Mac, when just things go well and everything falls into place. So I don't have any like hilarious stories to tell this week. So unless you do, I say we do what we do best.
Let's hop right into the news.
And let's hop right into the news, my friend. Episode number 45 is underway. I have some really, really, really cool news stories. And now here's the thing. I should have checked with you before, because a lot of these stories are about people being sued for video game.
I've got something completely different and out of the ordinary, so don't worry. Go for it.
For the legalese later in the show. Fantastic. So let's start with something just kind of fun. I know you didn't own all of the classic game consoles growing up, but I know you've played some N64 in your time, right? Mm-hmm. So let's start with this story on IGN. This is titled 16 Games That Need to Be on the Nintendo 64 Classic. If you've been anywhere but other than under a rock, I should say, you know that Nintendo recently released the Super Nintendo Classic Edition, and before that they released the Nintendo Entertainment System Classic Edition. It's inevitable that they're going to do one for the Nintendo 64. So, this article goes through a list of 16 games that need to be on the N64 Classic. Mac, I'm going to read just these titles, and then I want to know if you think there's any games they left off. If not, that's totally cool, but I have a few that I want on there that aren't on this list. So, 1080 Snowboarding, originally released in 1998. Donkey Kong 64, 1999. GoldenEye 007, 1997. Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, 2000. Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, 1998. Mario Golf, 1999. Mario Kart 64, 1996. Mario Party 2, 1999, Paper Mario 2000, Pokemon Puzzle League 2000, Pokemon Snap 1999, Star Wars Rogue Squadron 1998, Super Mario 64 1996, Super Smash Bros 1999, Wave Race 64 1996, F-Zero Expansion Kit 2000, and that's it. So I don't know if those are kind of like the games that are bread and butter for the N64, the well-known games, but I'm wondering if there's any that you think they omitted.
So, no, I think that's a pretty solid list. However, I do have to go back a couple minutes in time and take issue with your characterization of an N64 Classic as inevitable.
Why
I
is that?
completely disagree.
Really?
I think that the Nintendo 64 library is unfortunately nowhere near as strong as either the NES or the Super Nintendo's library. So I think that it's highly unlikely that they'll make a Nintendo 64 Classic. And I'm also concerned. Sorry, had to kill an gnat. I'm also concerned that that there would be licensing concerns. For example, if hypothetically there were to be a Nintendo 64 Classic, I think it could not be done without the inclusion of one of the 007 games.
I agree.
However, the 007 franchise is something that's very, very active right now. And Nintendo has shown already that in these nostalgia consoles that they are uninterested, maybe unwilling even to do a lot of heavy lifting in order to relicense games that they have on other platforms or haven't relicensed lately in order to put them on these nostalgia consoles. So I don't think that would be on there, and I think there's just too many games that there would be licensing concerns or issues with. So I don't think they'll probably even touch it for that reason. But that's just my thing.
Well, you raise a valid point because I believe that Rare is actually owned by Microsoft now.
I think so.
So like you're right. So those old like the 007s and the Banjo-Kazooies and stuff, those were Rare games, Rare company games made by that company. So I mean, it would be a challenge. You're absolutely right.
They also were Rare, but I thought, nah, forget it. Yo Holmes to Bel Air.
I love it, dude. You're still on point with the jokes, even late at night when we're streaming this or recording this. So the one game that was not on there that I feel should be on there, one of my personal favorites, Gauntlet Legends, just a fantastic 4-player game. It would also be interesting to see how they do controllers if they do release this console. Reason being, it's the only classic edition, if it is released, that requires four controllers, right? I doubt that they will bundle it with 4 controllers. That's not really how Nintendo operates. They may bundle it with 2 and then offer separate controllers later, or they may just make it compatible with existing N64 controllers. So there's so many good 4-player games that they would have to make it possible, especially with Mario Kart and 007 and things like that. So I don't know, man. I feel like I don't think Banjo-Kazooie was Banjo-Kazooie on that list that I just read as well.
I don't think I heard Banjo-Kazooie.
I'm too lazy to go back and read it. I feel like that's another game that should be on there if it was not. Anyway, moving on. I do disagree with you. I think that it is inevitable, but I guess we'll find out. Okay, moving on to some more news. Let's talk about PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, one of the biggest games in the industry right now. This article is on Game Rant. It says PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds has over 15 million players around the world. While that means good things for players looking to find games, it also means that some players feel the need to use cheats in order to gain an advantage over the rest. Thankfully, though, developer Bluehole seems to be on the case, as the company uses the BattleEye anti-cheat technology to stamp out cheaters from its game. Today, the BattleEye Twitter account confirmed that its technology has helped to ban over 322,000 cheaters from PUBG, and this figure continues to grow on a daily basis. Bans are currently being handed out to players on a rate of 6,000 to 13,000 a day, and that 20,000 bans have been handed out in the past 24 hours alone. We're going to talk about this a little bit more later in the show, so I don't want to delve too deep into this particular issue because it's happening in a lot of different games. So yeah, let's not commentate on that particular story right now, but we will get to it later in the show. A lot of stories today about like cheating and people getting sued and game cheating and clones. This next one is about Blizzard. It says Blizzard sues the Chinese over the Overwatch clone. We talked about this a little while back. It says Overwatch has over 30 million players across PC and consoles and has made an awful lot of money for developer Blizzard Entertainment. But with success comes people who would like a slice of that pie for themselves, meaning that there are plenty of clones of the team-based shooter too. Today, Blizzard announced that it would be taking legal action against one of those rip-off titles. Blizzard and NetEase, which operates Overwatch in China, are suing 4339 Endgame, I don't know if that's how it's pronounced, the makers of a mobile MOBA called Heroes of Warfare. The game essentially looks like Overwatch, running on incredibly low graphic settings. It includes a purple sniper lady like Widowmaker, a buff man with a shield like Reinhardt, and a pink-haired version of Soldier 76. So, Mac, at what point, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. At what point do you think a company is justified in suing another for something like this? Because really, a lot of this is parallel thinking. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I know that's such a broad question, but do you feel like suing over game clones is ever justified? Lawsuits, we're talking, not just cease and desist, but actual lawsuits.
You know, I think sometimes it is, but I'm glad I'm not the one who has to make that call because I really don't know. I mean, good examples is that when something is done well in a style of game or in something that we like, we tend to call it like an homage, even if it's like a blatant ripoff of something.
Right.
But it's done well, and there's some head nods to the stuff. We tend to call it an homage, and we're all fine with that. So honestly, I've never been very good at finding the line there. So I'm not the person to ask, but I think if there is actual theft going on, then certainly we've got there should be some lawsuits going on to protect your intellectual property. At least that's my take.
Yeah, I remember hearing a while back in relation to the Harry Potter books that J.K. Rowling, the author, actually kind of stole the premise of that universe from the book.
Bible. Oh, what? Oh, no, sorry. I just thought the whole Harry Potter...
I've never heard that theory.
Sacrificing himself at the end. I just thought that was a total Jesus thing, but, maybe not.
I've never heard this theory before. That's interesting, though. I heard that she stole it from another British author who wrote a work of fiction that was very much about kids going to a wizard school, and eventually they settled out of court. But I mean, some of these concepts are just not that original. Now, granted, if they have characters that look exactly like Overwatch characters and do the exact same thing, then yeah, maybe they have some ground to stand on legally when they're suing them. But I don't know. We see it in comedy all the time. Sometimes comedians come up with similar jokes, and it's a matter of parallel thinking rather than a matter of stealing. So I'm glad I'm not the one who has to decide, just like you. All right, moving on to our next news story. This is on Polygon, and it deals with loot box concerns. Mac, are you familiar with loot boxes and how they work?
I'll
break it down because there's probably a lot of people who are not if you don't play some of the games that I play. So effectively in Overwatch, for example, every time you level up, you get what's called a loot box. And there's other occasions where you get loot boxes as well when they're doing special events and things like that. You can open the loot boxes in-game, and they contain things like skins for your characters. Or what else do they contain? They contain currency that you can use to buy other, things to change your characters aesthetically only. Sometimes they contain guns. In other games besides Overwatch, they contain, just different things that you'd want to get. In-game items, basically, is the all-encompassing definition. And so some people feel that these loot boxes are being given out too frequently or not frequently enough, and that they can be used for gambling purposes. So if you think about a game like Counter-Strike Go, where you're constantly trying to get new skins and things for your weapons, people think that there's the potential for it to turn the game more into a gambling thing than an actual game. And so EA responds to Battlefront 2 loot box concerns. This article is on Polygon. I'm going to skip the intro, but it says, quote, rest assured, we're continuing to listen to you coming out of the beta, the developers wrote on the game's website. We're taking a look at some of the most discussed topics, from crates and progression to strike mode, which we're changing to a best of 3, the specialist infiltration ability, blah, blah, blah. It says, in its post, DICE and EA specifically addressed concerns about crates and progression, saying that, quote, the complete system was not in the beta and will continue to be tuned over time. As a balanced goal, we're working towards having the most powerful items in the game only earnable via in-game achievements, EA and DICE said. The post went on to clarify exactly what will be in Battlefront 2 crates, blah, blah, blah. Mac, I won't put you on the spot, but this kind of goes back, because I know that you're not super familiar with loot crates, but it kind of goes back to the concept of pay to win. If someone can use in real life money to purchase these loot crates, then it effectively gives them an unfair advantage. And so I think that's what's being discussed here. And we'll just leave it at that. We have some more stuff we'll talk about throughout the show as far as news. But Mac, that's what I had today for news, and I'll turn it over to you, man.
Well, then we'll take over with the next little bit, a little something we call gaming history, where we talk about some of the games that have gotten us where we are today. Today, I've got 3 that I want to chat about real quick, and one of them is a continuation of an old favorite. Mr. Nice Guy, do you have any memories of Doom 2 by chance?
I don't, to be honest with you. Original Doom only.
I do. I actually played the second Doom installment before I played the first Doom installment. Now, Doom 2 came out in 1994, and in a lot of ways, Doom didn't do too much, or sorry, I should say Doom 2 did not do too frightfully much to improve upon the predecessor. Although, you kind of, in a lot of ways, a lot of people experienced Doom in one of the inferior consoles, Mr. Nice Guy, not in the PC master class.
Oh, please.
So actually, the first Doom, since a lot of people, you would be forgiven for thinking that it had made a lot of improvements because of that, but in a lot of ways, it was not too frightfully different from the first. It wasn't until things like Doom 3 that they started to really, really tinker with the formula, huge improvements in graphics and things, but they did add a couple more items, some very iconic ones, of course, and well, the rest, as they say, is history. But Doom 2 was released for DOS, the disk operating system, in 1994. Now, another real fun one. This one was for Nintendo 64. It did not make the list that we referred to earlier. Jet Force Gemini.
Yeah.
So I had actually never played Jet Force Gemini until my next door neighbor invited me over, because he was, he had just put a 64 emulator on his computer and a totally legitimate copy of the game to play with.
It was a backup copy.
Yep, backup copy. And so he was playing Jet Force Gemini, and I was pretty. I mean, I wouldn't say I was floored, but I was pleasantly surprised with how well Jet Force Gemini played, being able to switch in between characters, because you had the guy, the girl, and then the dog, who had like hover boots or something along those lines. But Jet Force Gemini was definitely interesting.
Gemini. I'm stupid. Go ahead.
And so I watched it played for a couple of hours, and I thought it was really, really an excellent improvement. It was a lot better in my mind than the Nintendo 64 version of Mega Man Legends, another very notable, or Mega Man 64 as it was called on the Nintendo 64. The areas were a lot more three-dimensional, a lot less blocky, and the skyboxes and a lot of the atmosphere really made you feel like you were in some place, big, in a big world, rather than something like Mega Man 64, where a lot of the time you were underground, the places felt cramped and such. There was a lot more open world, or I should say big world feeling to it. It definitely wasn't open world. That wasn't something that we figured out until much later. But yeah, Jet Force Gemini, definitely a fantastic title for the Nintendo 64, and a good title for that sort of, for the transition of ideas into 3D that Nintendo was doing around that time. And then the last one, and I think for me, at least the most important of this list, happens to be a little thing called Warcraft 2.
Oh, yes.
Specifically the BattleNet edition, which is what made Warcraft go from, because I had played the original Warcraft, but my first introduction to the Warcraft series was Warcraft 2 Battle.net edition. And now we really take for granted these days what kind of stuff it takes to have an online experience playing with other people. Now, Battle.net was great for LAN parties, but you could also use TCP/IP protocol in order to get online and play with other people. Other people who had an internet connection.
You down with TCP? Yeah, you know me.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of those things where, I mean, like, Mr. Nice Guy, if we get home and the Steam servers are having trouble and we can't play our games, we usually get a little bit upset.
We get irritated.
Yeah, we get irritated. It's something we've grown to expect. It's something we've had for a long time. But back in those days, I mean, if it worked, you were excited, thrilled. I mean, it was a new experience. It was cutting edge to a lot of people. This was their first real experience playing online with other people. I know it was mine. And even though we stayed mostly in the LAN parties, just playing with other people.
For those of you who didn't know.
Yes. So anybody who's on your same Wi-Fi connection, your same router, you are in the same local area network, or LAN. Mm-hmm. So it was certainly fun, but it was kind of my first real non-school related introduction to what the internet was and what the internet could be. So in a lot of ways, Warcraft 2 Battle.net Edition has shaped everything I have perceived and thought about the digital world of communication, of collaboration, and of enjoyment. It's really, really just holds a special place in my heart, and that's what I had for gaming history.
Fantastic. Now, you just as you were talking about N64, you reminded me of a couple N64 games that actually need to be on the N64 Classic, which I'm going to go ahead and say is inevitable. We got Tony Hawk Pro Skater. I feel like that needs to be on there. Can't believe I forgot that earlier. I don't think Diddy Kong Racing was on the list. Turok, not a game that I played or was one of my favorites. I played it a little, but it's just a well-known game. And there was a fourth one that I can now not remember. So there's a few other games that I feel should be part of it if that comes out. But Max, should I move on to our next segment?
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Now, we switched things up a couple weeks ago. We started doing a topic of the week rather than a viewer question, just so we can make sure that we're talking about stuff that's currently relevant in the gaming industry. And this week's topic of the week comes from an article on Kotaku. And it says, Epic is suing 2 alleged Fortnite cheaters. Now, what makes this story different from some things that we've read earlier is it's not one game company suing another. It's a game company suing individual gamers because of their cheating. And I want to get your thoughts on this in the chat. So it says, on Tuesday, Fortnite publisher Epic Games filed civil complaints against 2 alleged associates of the website Addicted Cheats. I had never heard of this website before. The article goes on to say, who apparently used the site's aimbotting services to kill Twitch streamers live on camera. Obviously in-game, you guys, not in real life. For $5 to $15 monthly subscriptions, Addicted Cheats botting services aid players in tracking, aiming at, and killing enemies in PvP games. To architect cheats for Fortnite's new Battle Royale mode, which now boasts over 10 million players, for the cheat makers would have to reverse engineer and modify the game's source code. In a civil complaint, Epic Games argues that making and using the altered game-breaking code is against Fortnite's end-user license agreement and the Copyright Act. In using cheat software to modify the game's code this way, the complaints read, defendant and the other cheaters who use the cheat create unauthorized derivative works based on the Fortnite in violation of the Copyright Act. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Mac, I know we're not lawyers, man, but is there ever an instance, and let me keep it broad, because I don't want to say ever or never, but do you think that this instance is a good example of a time when they should be suing the gamers, or should they just ban them and be done with it? I have my thoughts. Just to recap for those who may have not understood the article, These gentlemen are using what's called an aimbotting service. So it allows them to kill players in-game automatically. It's a cheat. And they used it to kill some Twitch streamers who were live. Worthy of being sued, Mac, or should it just be a ban at this point?
I just say ban myself. And I can kind of see where they're coming from, but yeah, I think ban is much better than attempting to sue somebody. I mean, there's the potential that it would go well, but then there's the potential that it doesn't, that a lawsuit doesn't go well, and then you're just on the hook for attorney's fees. But then again, all that being said, I mean, you know, I imagine these guys, it's a very successful game, so maybe they've got the money that they can burn, and they just feel like they want to send a strong message. But I would just say ban.
And that's what I thought too. I mean, here's the thing. It is a successful game, but it's in beta. You know what I mean? So, I mean, not that that makes it okay what these guys are doing, but in my mind, just ban them from the game and let it go. I mean, if you sue these guys, they probably don't have money to pony up and pay for the damages that they've caused. Just ban them and let it go. That's my stance. I'd love to hear some other opinions in the chat. I don't think I've ever heard of a game company suing over something like this. I also don't know why people use aimbots to cheat. I feel like just play the game and have fun. It can't really be fun for you to pay for a subscription just to kill people automatically, so just let it go. We'll keep it short and sweet as far as the topic of the week this week. That's what I had, Mac. Do you want to keep it moving to the next segment?
Absolutely. So the next thing we want to talk about is our crowdfunding kick or kickstart segment. Now, in this, I present a Kickstarter or some type of crowdfunding, goal, game-related thing that we take a look at. We discuss some of the virtues, some of the vices, and then at the end, we give our determination whether we think it should be kickstarted, it's worth our money, or we think it should be kicked out of here. And we also encourage you to participate along with us, whether you're here during the live recording to type it into the chat, or if you're on the bus listening to this podcast in your car, just yell it on out. We will tally these from here. Mr. Nice Guy has the eastern portion of the United States. I've got the western portion, and our devotees in Europe and Asia and such will take care of yours.
And
so remember, yes. Oh, and Australia. Can't forget that. Rabble's got us covered down under. So in this particular one, I'm a little bit torn. So, Mr. Nice Guy, I will posit to you, would you rather hear about a piece of hardware, or would you rather hear about a game that's being crowdfunded?
You know, we see so many games. Let's switch it up and see some hardware this week.
Okay. Let's see. I actually didn't think that you were going to go this way. So
I see you tossed me one that you thought, and I went the wrong way. Do you want to do the game instead?
No. This should work out just fine for me. Okay, sweet. It just took me a second to pull it up. So this one that I have for your consideration is an Indiegogo project. I will, for those of us who are here live, I will post it in the chat. So it's called CD, or CD, if you want to say it, or maybe CD. So this is a retro gaming system. It is specifically being developed in order to play the discs from PlayStation 1, Neo Geo CD, TurboGrafx CD, Sega CD, PC CDs, so like up to DOS, you know, we're talking around the IBM 386, 486 era or so, and such. And it does have a built-in emulator, so it can do some of the lower powered, lower difficulty emulated games for this. So let's talk a little bit about this. It is a chip. In this case, it happens to be an Orange Pi, one of the revisions of Orange Pi, inside of this box with a CD player, and it's designed specifically so that you drop in the physical media that you already own, and then you play your game from there. Now, unlike some retro gaming systems, it does not dump the image and play from a dumped image, but it rather plays straight from the CD. Now, this is less of an important distinction in an optical media than it is in a cartridge, because, for example, if let me just reach over, grab my cartridge. Here we go. So I'm holding up a Final Fantasy cartridge here.
Yep.
That happens to have on it a save. Battery-powered save, but when I plug this in and I'm playing it on the cartridge and I save, it will go to the cartridge. There are some games, like I believe the Retron 5 does this, where it dumps the image of from the cartridge into the memory of the console and plays it from there, which means that your saves don't actually go to your game cartridge. That again is not such a huge deal, except for those few games where saving is important. But that being said, it is a little bit awesome that there is one being made to play the game straight off of the optical media instead of taking the image, storing the image, and playing it from there. I bring up the whole saving function because there's no real disadvantage in optical media, like in a CD-based game, to not being able to save to the CD, because that's not how it worked back in that generation.
Right.
But it is just noteworthy that they're doing that approach rather than the other. Now, one thing that is a few things that are unfortunate. We don't have emulation for Dreamcast or oh gosh, the other one's just or Sega Saturn. But I am given to understand that both of those consoles are notoriously difficult to emulate. So I guess I can understand them not doing that. Now, all of that being thrown out there, what is the thing that CD is trying to sell you? And that is an HD console that will play games from basically, you're looking circa late 90s, when CD media was starting to become more popular for our games. And it is supposed to be plug and play solution. You will connect your controllers through Bluetooth, so it'll work with your PS3 controllers. They'll even be including some, if you go that route, they'll even be including some knockoff PS3 controllers that will work with the console. And yeah, it's based off of it'll be the operating system is based off of a variant of the Xbox Media Center type thing, which was a great media center. So yeah, there are definitely some pluses to this, but I do want to talk a little bit about some of the minuses here. I have recently been bitten, once bitten, twice shy, about this type of a promise of a retro console that winds up being plug and play. And that was the Retro Engine Sigma. And it really was not plug and play. But what makes me a little bit concerned is that this particular system is the exact same guts, just added a CD drive onto what I already have over here and don't like, which is the Retro Engine Sigma.
Is this CD drive a peripheral, or is it actually
peripheral?
Because it looks like it's an add-on. I could be wrong.
Is that no? The CD drive is baked in. It's a part, but you can see from the bits that they've got on their prototype that it's just kind of your run-of-the-mill CD DVD player. Okay. That they've just put in. Basically, they've taken, if you were to take a CD player, DVD player, and you were to strap it, instead of plugging it into your computer, you were to plug it into this emulation backbone. There's, that's about it. And again, just because the Retro Engine Sigma was such a disappointment, they ran it off of the exact same chip, the exact same, pretty sure the exact same hardware is in this that's in there. And so the only real difference between the two, because they're not actually making the software, it's just a modification of existing software that's open source. They're not actually, they're not actually doing really much. This is just that orange pie. I know how much these parts cost.
Exactly.
And when they're asking in order to get your buy-in, where you get the initial buy-in with no controller is $110 plus shipping, estimated to ship in March 2018, which it probably will not ship in March 2018. I feel like this is definitely an avoid for me. Definitely kick it out of here, because I don't believe that they will have it be a plug-and-play solution. And at $110 for a plug-and-play solution for this type, I just don't think it's priced reasonably enough. I know how much it costs. If it were $60, then we'd be talking, but not $110.
Yeah, to be fair though, it does. It looked like there was an early bird one that was $99. They're all sold out. But yeah, so now it's $110. The one thing I'm curious about with this is it says that there's online multiplayer for some games, and I can't remember where I read it. Somewhere under the specs, it said online multiplayer. I guess I feel like with this type of thing, unless you're using it to emulate, people who have those old discs that this would play still have their original hardware, right? And the challenge to me of playing a game that's even 5 years old outside of like a Call of Duty or something that's just really, really popular, the challenge of playing or a PC game where the communities never die, the challenge of finding people to play with is hard, on older games. So I guess I just don't see how online multiplayer for some of these games would be a useful feature. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Like, I'd love to play some like Tony Hawk Pro Skater or Gauntlet Legends like we were talking about earlier online, or GoldenEye 007. But the idea of there being someone who also has this CD console and also has that same desire to play that game, the concept that a full game could be created in a lobby is just not really realistic. So I don't know why that's a feature. I think it's a cool feature, but I don't think it's relevant. I think this is a little too ambitious. I'm going to say kick as well, because I have a RetroPie and I know how easy it is to build them, a Raspberry Pi. So.
Yeah, and it's not difficult to build on that firmware, and they're not building on much of anything. It's just a tweak of some already existing stuff and then selling for a price that really is quite a bit higher than I'm interested in paying for it. Now, I will say, to their credit, I am familiar with at least one YouTube retro person who's popular in the retro community, Metal Jesus Rocks, who happens...
Very familiar, yep.
Yeah, and he happens to have his hands on one of the prototypes for this, and and so if you want to see that in action, you can check out his work on it, his work with it. But at the same time, I mean, I'm just going to be asking myself all the time when I see somebody like, oh, this can do this, I'll just be like, did you just take a $20 piece, a $20 chip, and a $15 CD drive, put them together with some software other people wrote, and then, try and sell it to me for $110? Yeah, not happening. So yeah, and yeah, so definitely a kick on me. Kick it out of here. I'm
upset that you only get a sticker for $25.
Yeah, I know, right? That's one of...
ridiculous.
You get a sticker for $25. Gee, thanks. 4 inches by 3 inches. Yep. Great. And the 4 people who backed at that level and got the sticker, I don't know what's up. Oh, is it plus shipping?
It better not be. Oh, let's check.
Yep, it is $25 plus shipping.
How much does it cost to ship a sticker, though?
Not much. And 4 inches wide by 3 inches long, or long and wide, or what have you. You just send that in an envelope. That's
a stamp. Right.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm just not particularly thrilled with that. I would love for something like that to actually work out. It would be fantastic. But at the end of the day, if I had all of that optical media and wanted to play it, I would just pop it into this computer here and play it. And heaven forbid it won't work. I've got a laptop, an old computer that I use to run older programs on. And then, like, for example, when you want to run something like X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, very difficult to stream because the game hates cooperating. So running that on your own system while you're live streaming, difficult to do. So I run it on the laptop that can run it easily and then just capture the video out. So
there you go.
So yeah, I mean, I have the means. And if you are willing to fork over that $110, you also have the means to make it happen. So I just, yeah. But that's all I have to say about that. It looks like we're all pretty much in agreement, even with the chat, that it seems like this is a kick sort of situation.
Kick it to
so
the
I'm just going to
curb.
say kick it. And we'll get everybody's feedback. And in the meantime, we can move on, Mr. Nice Guy, to your favorite segment.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time for my favorite segment of the show, the Dummy of the Week. A segment of the show where we talk about somebody who did something stupid, idiotic, or downright dumb, and we make fun of them a little bit. Now, this one's actually kind of... oops, I just accidentally got off of it. It's funny, but it's more sad, the way that people behave. I'm not even going to read the title. Let's go ahead and just hop in. This is on the Daily News, nydailynews.com. It says, a Minnesota man was arrested after authorities say he faked having terminal cancer in order to trick people into giving him money, which he then spent on video games and marijuana. Now, I got to say, first of all, I find it ironic that he was faking having a disease that often requires medicinal marijuana, and then he did go buy marijuana with the money. Are
you suggesting he should have cut out the middleman and be like, I have difficulty buying medicinal grade marijuana. Please send me your medicinal grade marijuana so that I can have treatment for this cancer? Is that what you're suggesting?
I'm not justifying this kind of behavior on any level, but I did just have to point out the irony there. It goes on. The article goes on to say the Faribault Police Department was tipped off to Jeremiah John Smith's alleged scheme in May 2016. An investigation revealed the 37-year-old had told people he was battling stage 4 cancer and was given 18 to 25 months to live. So if you're going to do a scam where you say that you're dying, don't put a time limit on how long you're going to live. Because, I mean, what do you think, like, after it's been 25 months, they're like, weren't you supposed to die? And he's just like, it's a miracle. It's a Christmas miracle. All your money kept me alive. Anyway, the article goes on. It says he later claimed that he had 6 months to live, but it was all a lie, once again. And also, if you're going to change the amount of time you have to live, you should extend it and make it longer, not shorter. That's what this guy did. According to a criminal complaint, Smith quit his job shortly after revealing his, quote, diagnosis, unquote. A GoFundMe page was also set up to help him. Authorities said it raised more than $6,800. In February 2016, his community held 2 events, raising more than $15,000. Investigators reportedly said that Smith spent all the money from the fundraisers. Some of the money went towards paying off $4,000 in outstanding bills, and the rest was spent on alcohol, marijuana, dart tournaments, and the mobile video game Clash of Clans. Quote, it is surprising. I guess you don't expect to see people pretend to have a disease and try to make money off it, Rice County Attorney John Fossum told WCCO. Detectives said Smith's wife became suspicious her husband was lying. Okay, wait a minute. So he also lied to his wife about this? And she didn't immediately know? Like, she became suspicious. Like, I just got to finish reading this. Detectives said Smith's wife became suspicious her husband was lying when she couldn't find his medical records or bills for treatment. Police said every time Smith had a doctor's appointment, he refused to let his wife go. I can only imagine that conversation, Mac. she's probably like, okay, now you know you're going to chemo and you're not gonna be well enough to drive afterwards, so I'm gonna drive you. And he's like, no, girl, you know, I'll just tough it out. I'll be okay. And then he comes home with like a new Xbox smelling like alcohol and weed. And she's just like, where did you go? To chemo. It's a new experimental type of chemo, honey. This is how they do it now in 2017. This is unreal. It says investigators said the first time they met with Smith, he told them he would turn over his medical records. He never did. I could keep reading, but I feel like it's redundant at this point. Yeah, so I mean, he spent it on a crappy mobile game, lots of liquor and lots of drugs, and lied to his wife about it too. I don't know what else to say, Mac. I feel like this is an open and shut case.
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks for your comments in the chat, you guys. That has been our dummy of the week. Mac, I'll turn it back over to you.
What a dummy. All right. Well, now we're talking about something that is legalese. Now, I feel like legalese, lawsuits, people suing other people has been a big staple of this evening's podcast. But this is where I want to dive a little bit deeper into something that impacts us as gamers. And now that I've said that, I'm going to absolutely do nothing of the like, and instead talk about something involving live streaming and the Supreme Court.
I'm excited. I'm
excited. So no real interface with games. I apologize, like we normally would have. Well, so interestingly enough, you would think, given things like, I don't know, net neutrality and stuff like that, that people who are representatives in the United States Congress aren't even aware that the internet is a thing. You'd probably be forgiven for thinking that members of Congress might not be aware that you can watch things online.
What?
I mean, I certainly expect from the types of things I hear from some of those people that they don't realize what the internet is used for. But interestingly enough, for many years, there have been some members of Congress and the public that have been trying to get the Supreme Court to live stream their oral arguments, particularly in an effort to make the Supreme Court a little bit more transparent, them and their decisions, their deliberations, and such. Now, it's not entirely 100% closed, because you can have access to some of the things, of the court. Like, for example, the oral arguments are often open to the public. Audio versions, you can normally get those, say, on Fridays of that week, sometimes later. And the opinions that the court gives are actually posted to their website, like it's supremecourt.gov. So there are some other things, though, that leave a little bit lacking. Like, for example, for the longest time, it hasn't actually taken the briefs that have been submitted by various parties to the court. It hasn't made those things available online. However, apparently, that's going to be something that they're going to be doing next month. They're going to start putting those briefs, submitting, and briefs contain a lot of the legal background for the case and for the arguments and so on. Now, and a lot of times things don't get to the Supreme Court until they've been heard in lower courts, or the lower courts have decided to push those up. So a lot of times we wind up being able to see the content or infer the general content of these briefs from the lower court documents. So this isn't such a big thing, but it is, some nice moves forward. However, in spite of these nice moves forward, the Supreme Court has said that they are not going to live stream their oral arguments.
Of course not.
And And what is very interesting, though, is the claim that that even live streaming just the audio portion of the oral arguments might impact the outcome or have adverse effect on the oral arguments, which I don't know if I really agree with. But nonetheless, it's something that that John Roberts Jr., Chief Justice, has said is their kind of official stance, that somehow live streaming would adversely affect the arguments. Now,
somehow, some way, live streaming would adversely affect arguments like every single day. I had to throw that in. Snoop Dogg, yo.
I just have no idea. I really don't know what to do with that, because it's not like any way that they would be live streaming would be interactive in any way. And that would be your best argument for why something like that could be detrimental, would be in that interactivity. If people are yelling obscene stuff in the comments, and you were watching that as you were trying to argue your case. No, I just don't see it.
Here's the thing, Mac. You've watched some political shows, right? And of course, they're exaggerations. But I mean, to think that people's votes aren't swayed by friendships and by, oh, you owe me a favor, and by other political things. I mean, like, I believe that kind of stuff really does happen, right?
Okay, yeah,
and
no,
so
I can go with you on that.
In voting, that type of stuff cannot be live streamed. You know what I mean? From their perspective, they want to keep that under wraps. And so I think that that's at least part of the reason why they don't want to do it. That's just me guessing. I could be wrong.
I don't know if I buy it. I just don't think that there's any reasonable situation under which that sort of interactivity, even with special interests, would be something that took place. But you don't think that happens? Well, when we're talking about Supreme Court stuff, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I mean, that is the definition of like a lobbyist, is to be a special interest and tell someone how they should vote on behalf of the people who are paying you money. So, I mean, that is what a lobbyist is. So no, it absolutely happens. However, I don't see how live streaming the oral arguments or any part or portion of the Supreme Court hearings would bring that sort of deleterious effect.
Okay, fair enough.
But that's just me. Anyway, so there's just a little something. Some legalese for you to enjoy over your weekend. So, Mr. Nice Guy, that's all that I had. So unless you had anything else, should we talk about what we've been watching and what we've been playing?
Let's do it. My favorite segment of the show. And for those of you who don't know, this is where we talk about those things Mac just said. And you guys let us know in the chat the stuff you've been watching, the nerdy games you've been playing, because we're always looking for new stuff. And Mac, do you want to lead off?
Absolutely. So I've been playing. There's a game called Dead Cells. It's a Metroidvania. I've been playing it for a while now, and I pick it up and put it down every so often and enjoy that. But also, some people, this particularly one modder for Left 4 Dead 2's named Roku, and he has made Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3 in Left 4 Dead 2, and it is pretty amazing.
What games has he put in Left 4 Dead 2?
Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, nice.
It's just astounding. It's very fun, but because of the nature of the complexity of the campaigns, you need to have at least one other person to help you. You can't just have bots. They tend to get hung up at certain areas and not realize how to move forward. So yeah, definitely needs to be played with other people, but it is amazing and fun. So yeah, that's what I've been playing. And as for what I've been watching, I haven't been watching a lot, but Mrs. the Mac and I have been going through the most recently released season of Dark Matter, and we really enjoy that show. For a brief period of time, they lost, what's his name? David was it David Cross? I think his name is. Hang on.
The comedian?
No, nope. Oh gosh, no, nope. That's not who I'm thinking. Dark Matter. I've got to find his name.
That's okay. While you're pulling that,
Roger Cross. That's his name.
Perfect.
So Roger Cross was the lifeblood, honestly, of that show. And so for a brief period of time, he wasn't there for a couple of episodes, and it just, for myself and Mrs. the Mac, kind of tanked. But then he's back, and everything's good. And sunshine and lollipops and rainbows everywhere, and so it's all good now. But that's what I've been watching and what I've been playing. What about you, Mr. Nice Guy?
Dude, that is fantastic. Now, I've been watching and playing a lot. I've been doing a lot of Retro Pie stuff. I've been doing a lot of Destiny 2. Loving that game, man. It's fantastic. And I'm getting back into Hearthstone on mobile. Now, as far as that's what I've been playing. I think I might have said watching. But as far as what I've been watching, we're rewatching the Pirates movies, actually, with Captain Jack Sparrow action. And it's a fantastic franchise because we've never seen the newest one that just came out. So we're going back rewatching all the old ones so we can then catch up. Still watching Madam Secretary, watching the most recent season of Arrow, and watching this new YouTube channel that I just found called Arcade Impossible. I really, really like arcade games, and they kind of go out and they go to different arcade places and they find some cool stuff. So that's kind of what I have been into. Also playing some Fortnite on the PS4. I almost forgot to mention that. And because we're recording this basically at midnight, when we typically record, we're midnight on Friday right now. We typically record it Tuesday at 9 p.m. A lot of people are sleeping, so we don't have really a lot of stuff in the chat. But Mac, do you want to read the few things we got in the chat as far as what people are doing?
Absolutely. We've got some a recommendation for Star Trek Discovery. Very different and alien, and Pazzy's very into it. And I mean, myself, there is one that I've been thinking about. I'm not sure I'm ready to pull the trigger on Discovery because here in the US, we have to, in the UK, you can just watch it on Netflix. It's on Netflix. Everywhere outside of the US, it's just on like their Netflix. In the US, though, you have to pay $6.99 in order to watch it with ads online.
And that's silly.
And if you want to get rid of the ads, $10 a month in order to watch Star Trek Discovery online. Now, to be fair, that does also allow you to stream all of the other Star Trek television shows. But where I am in the US, everything else but Star Trek Discovery is on Netflix anyway, and I'm already paying for that. So that's not really a pull for me. So
it's some nonsense.
It is. So I'm on the fence about that. And then there's a Seth Rogen Star Trek-like show called The Orville. And I'm really not a big fan of any of Seth Rogen's work. I've tried to like his work, but I just can't.
Have you ever watched Freaks and Geeks?
Yes, and it just did not work for me.
You had your boy James Franco.
I mean,
I don't
James.
know if he's your boy. I'm just
he's not really, but nonetheless. So anyway, I digress. Takawe's been playing some Shadowrun Returned. Did I say Seth Rogen or Seth MacFarlane?
No,
they're both equally.
Well, the interesting thing is Seth MacFarlane is making a parody space show right now.
Yeah, that's The Orville.
Yeah, so I think that's where the confusion is.
Sorry, I was thinking Seth MacFarlane. I'm also not a big fan of Seth Rogen either. But see, all the Seths, just there's none of them.
What about? I can't think of anyone famous named Seth, so I can't contradict you. Well, guys, thank you for tuning into the show. Mac, do you have anything else? Did you go over all your stuff, or did you have more?
Oh yeah, no, that was just it. Not a big fan of Seth MacFarlane or his work, so not enthused about the Orville.
Now here's the thing: we got to differentiate. Are you not a fan of him, Mac, or are you just not a fan of his work?
Well, I mean, I haven't met the guy.
Just say you're not a
I
fan
imagine,
of his work,
I
Matt.
imagine
Don't
if I met
personally
him,
attack
I would
people.
like. But I mean, I have seen him in things like, for example, he was in A Million Ways to Die in the West. He acted in that. I have seen it. I did
That's
not
his work,
like
though.
it.
That's his work.
Yes.
You said
so
acted,
all of his work,
but not him personally.
Mr. Nice Guy, let me ask you. Can you dislike someone without having met them in person? Can you?
Yeah.
Okay. I think I might dislike him.
Not based on a persona. And that's what acting is.
That's the thing. We don't really know whether it's a persona or not until we've met him.
You're right.
I mean, I seem to be a nice guy, right? But I mean, but who knows? You meet me in person, I might be terrible.
He is.
Yes.
I'm just kidding. Guys, thank you so much for tuning into the show. Episode number 45 is a wrap. You guys are so awesome for being here. We'll be back next week. Mac, we're still doing this on Tuesday, right? Even though we did one today.
You better believe it.
We'll be here
I've got
Tuesday, 9 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Mountain. Twitch.tv/2nerdsinapod. Hit us up on iTunes. Leave a rating, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Also hit us up on Twitter at 2nerdsinapod. You guys really are the best viewers on Twitch. We'll see you next week. Keep it nerdy. Deuces.